Hey, you guys, how are you? How are you? How are you? Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. For those of you that are listening on my podcast, Nonprofit Nuggets with Jennifer Yarbrough, thank you so very much for being a part of my community. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for engaging. I really do appreciate it. And for those of you that are watching on my YouTube, I appreciate you as well for your subscriptions, for your likes, and for your shares. Listen. Today, I want to talk about something that's really, really serious. I want to talk about risk. I want to talk about risk and what the funders, what the donors, what the contributors feel about risk. Okay. In my last video, we talked about capacity. We talked about what funders really mean when they say capacity and why it has nothing to do with how much they like you. Okay, today we're going to talk about the next word that quietly stops funding before it ever starts. And that word is risk. Risk. Many of you often hear that this feels too risky, right? You might hear, we're not comfortable with the risk level. You might hear someone respond to a grant application that says, we're prioritizing lower risk investments. Okay, so the word is risk. And what that feels like is you may be thinking they don't trust us. They think we're irresponsible. They don't believe in our mission. But that's not what risk means. Today, I'm going to explain what funders actually mean by risk, why risk is not personal, but how funders measure risk, and what you can do to reduce it without becoming a large organization. All right. So I'm going to keep it simple, but you guys know I'm going to keep it honest. Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. Let me explain risk in the simplest way possible. Imagine lending your bike to a friend. You're not asking, do I like them? Do they mean well? Right? You're asking, will I get my bike back? Will it be taken care of? What happens if it breaks? That's risk. Risk is not about the intent. It's about what could go wrong and who handles it. Funders are doing the same thing, but just with money. Many of you, as leaders, often connect funding decisions to identity, right? Because the mission is personal, the story is personal, the work is emotional. So when the funder says this is risky, you hear you are risky. But the funders are not evaluating you. They're evaluating your systems. They're evaluating your controls. They're evaluating your predictability. Risk is a structural asset, not a character judgment, right? So when a funder talks about risk, they're usually talking about five things. They're talking about financial risk. Financial risk. Can this organization manage the money properly? Are there controls? Is their spending tracked? Are funds separated, right? The designated dollars or the non designated? How or are you commingling funds, right? Are you using your dollars to support the organization? Are you using your personal money to ensure that the organization is able to operate? That is a financial risk for the funder. So if you say, well, Jen, we don't have any donors, we don't have any funders, we don't have any supporters, Jen, I'm funding everything out of my pocket. You are a financial risk to the funder. The second thing that they look at when they look at the word risk is leadership risk. Does everything depend on one person? Is there a plan or a process of decision making? Is decision making stable? If you're a person that says, Jen, I got a nonprofit, but I'm doing everything by myself. I'm running programs, I'm running the organization, I'm managing the board, I'm doing everything by myself. You are a leadership risk to the funder. They're not sure who's managing the organization, who's overseeing the program. Are there real roles and responsibilities? If you're the only person, how are decisions being made? And are those decisions being made properly and strategically? Are those decisions designed to protect the investment? If you're doing everything by yourself, you are a leadership risk to a funder. The next is governance risk. Is there board oversight? Are there conflict of interest managed? Is there anyone holding the leadership accountable? Are there roles and responsibilities that is outlined for the governance capacity? If you say, Jen, we don't have a board member. Jen, I don't know how to find board members. Jen, I have my relatives on the board, but they're not active. That is a governance risk. That's a part of your compliance. That's a part of what keeps you active as a not for profit organization. And so, if you're not able to manage those risks, the funder and the donor and the contributor don't feel confident giving you money. Number four, operational risk. Can the programs be delivered consistently? What happens if staff or volunteers leave? Is there a process of documentation of how the organization operates? Is there a organizational strategic plan? Do you have a process by which you are measuring and monitoring your organization's capacity to achieve your mission? If the answer to that is no, then you are an operational risk to the funder. Number five is a sustainability risk. What happens when the grant dollars run out? Are there diverse funding streams? Will the organization collapse without these funds? Or, Jen, I can't do anything until I get a grant. Jen, I'm funding everything out of my own pocket. Jen, I was funding everything out of my own pocket until we ran out of money and then we had to stop. That's a sustainability risk. The donor and the funder is like, I don't know if you're going to be able to maintain and keep this thing going. Risk is about what happens after the check is written, right? Here's a critical correction. Small organizations are not automatically risky, but unstructured organizations are. A small nonprofit organization with clear governance, clear financials, a realistic budget, and documented systems is less risky than one with chaos, right? So risk is not about size, but it is about predictability. Funders prefer a system, a boring system, clear controls, and steady leadership. Not excitement, not urgency, not heroics, right? Funders didn't become more cautious about spending their money because they stopped caring, right? Now the controls of how decisions are being made are much more stringent. Why? Because they've had to become more cautious. They've had to become more cautious about where they put money. Why? Because there are more nonprofit organizations than ever. Reporting requirements have increased, public scrutiny has increased, and donor expectations have also increased. So every failed grant hurts communities, damages trust, and creates internal consequences. So funders have had to learn we've got to reduce risk before we release these funds. That's stewardship. That's not suspicion. That's not ignoring that your work and your idea or your program is great. It just says that they can't trust your organization. This is the empowering part, okay? And how risk is reductible. How do you reduce your risk? Ways to lower your risk is separating financial duties, activating board oversight, starting with smaller grants, right? Tracking outcomes consistently, document your decisions, build reserves slowly. Diversifying your funding streams is a way to lower risk. Risk decreases when systems exist, when roles are clear, when leadership is stable. You don't eliminate risk, but you can manage it. Okay, you can manage it. So when a funder flags risk, they're not saying never. They're saying not yet. They're saying not this amount. They're saying not this structure. Risk is feedback. And any of you who learn to stop being discouraged by the word risk, you'll start being more strategic. Okay? I remember a organization that I was working with. They were asking for a certain amount of money for a particular grant. They had applied for this grant several times. And the grant funder, from the time that they were brand new until the time they were like 4 or 5 years old, they applied every year, every year, every year. And every year they got turned down. And I said to them, I said, they're watching you. They're watching you to see how risky their investment in you is. Keep applying, keep applying. They're not rejecting you, they are evaluating you. They're trying to figure out, can you really manage this money? Can you really, use this investment wisely and be able to leverage it and sustain it? They're watching you. You want to be able to prove and to show that you can manage the risk. All right? So remember this. Capacity is about how much responsibility you can carry. Risk is about what could go wrong if you carry more. Funders are not asking if you care. They're asking if the work will survive. When you understand risk, funding stops feeling personal and it starts feeling like you can navigate it. All right. I want you to think about this. I want you to look at your organization and I want you to determine how much risk are we to a funder? We might be brand new. We may not have a board. We may not have a fundraising plan. We may not have donors and supporters. We may be funding this organization by ourselves. We may not have the roles and responsibilities of boards. We may not have experience of running an organization. We may not have a team. We may not have help. We may not have a budget. We may be doing everything by ourselves. If any of that sounds like you, all you got to do is put together systems. All you've got to do is recreate a structure that can manage the risk. All right? You're not lost. You're not sunk. You just want to be strategic. All right? You want to be intentional. And you want to position your organization in a place and in a space where the funder can trust you with the money, that they will lend you the bike and they are confident that you'll bring it back. All right. Thank you all for listening in. I appreciate you. Please comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what resonated with you. And let me know your plan to measure and monitor your risk so that your organization can move from just having started, but to scale and to sustain itself. All right. And if I can help in any way, feel free to let me know.